Hey, it's Andy Yanez, and you're listening to another episode of Pawd Slama Jama, now owned by Let's Rage Cougs. On this episode, we'll be talking about the Houston Cougars football seniors. We'll have our third of four segment focusing on HOU NIL, the Houston Cougars name, image, and likeness entity. This time, we'll be focusing on their advisory board and how that differentiates and has really been able to make HOU NIL its own unique thing. We will also focus on the women's basketball team, who is through for the first four games of the season. They're 1-3 here with head coach Ron Huey, and some of the players had to say. And then we'll wrap it up with the men's basketball team. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Pawd Slama Jama.
Got high standards, high goals, and we know what it takes to get there.
I want to be unguardable, if I'm honest.
Coaches coach, players play.
And that's a great place to be in your life, where you can care less what other people think.
Joining me as always, Da'Yon Dunlap. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on, brother? All is well. How about you? I know you busy nowadays, man. You stay to state.
Yeah. Oh my God. Traveling on Monday was a pain, but I made it. We're back, and now we're focusing on Saturday. It's going to be another busy day on Saturday. We'll have the doubleheader. The men's basketball team hosting Kent State at 1:30 p.m. Then the football team wraps off its regular season at 6:30 p.m. at TDCU Stadium against Tulsa. Now, obviously, it's going to be an interesting night because it's going to be senior night. Technically, Houston still has a very slim chance at being able to make the American Athletic Conference championship game. Now, looking at all those scenarios, I think it is very slim, and I think the one that would probably result in Houston at least having that outside shot would be for Houston to win. Obviously, that has to happen regardless. I think it would have to be a convincing win against Tulsa. UCF would have to lose to South Florida because they were still ranked in the college football rankings. So if they win, even if Houston and UCF tie, UCF will have that advantage with the CFP rankings. I also think they need Tulane to beat Cincinnati because Tulane has that head-to-head advantage. So a lot of stuff needs to happen. It's really gonna be out of their control. But regardless of that, the main headliner will be that senior night for this group of Houston Cougars football players. And I think the way this season has gone, there's been a lot of more put on these seniors to be able to lead the team and be able to carry them, not just behind the 2-3 start, but just the ups and downs of the season. Season could have really gone off the rails in that game against Memphis, and they won 5 of 6. And I think that one they didn't win is the one that's coming back and really biting them right now against SMU. But it has been a good turnaround just to kind of show they didn't mail it in. But here we're going to jump right into the clip. Here's what defensive coordinator Doug Belk had to say specifically about this year's group of seniors on the defensive side of the ball.
There's a lot of guys, that I can mention and things that we could talk about, but we have a lot of guys who have contributed a lot to our program that will walk on that field for the last time and compete as a Houston football player. And a lot of these guys have been around for a long time through different coaches, different schemes, and they represent the University of Houston very well. And, we want to make sure that we send those guys out the right way and that they have a memorable senior night. And I think that's our responsibility as a staff and anybody who's not a senior on this team, to play their heart out for those guys. And, every year is unique and every year is different. But in our group, as far as defensively, as far as seniors, there's been a lot of leadership provided, a lot of guidance, and also a lot of production. So it's going to be one of those bittersweet moments where those guys run out the last time. But, I think they're very grateful for their time here, and we're very grateful for them. So it'll be a special time for everybody.
Once again, that was Houston Cougars football defensive coordinator Doug Belk on the group of seniors overall. And I'm going to jump straight into the clip by Elias Bell, who he's a defensive lineman on the Cougars. He's going to be one of those 17 players that are going to be honored by the team on Saturday. And really, Like I mentioned at the top of the show, just in regards to all the American Athletic Conference scenarios, I think the biggest thing for the seniors, and you're going to hear from this clip by Bell, is just, they're trying to reestablish, specifically on that defensive side of the ball, leave an identity going into next season. So here's what Elias Bell had to say about this upcoming
A little
Saturday.
bit these last couple of days that this pretty much like my last week of like regular season of college. I really didn't see it coming, to end anytime soon, but it has. And I'm just grateful for everything I've been through here and just all the relationships I've made here with all my teammates. And, I'm really going to miss them and playing with these guys here. So, yeah, it's dwelled on me a little bit, but I'm actually looking forward to it, because a new chapter in life after this, and excited to see how everybody does after football.
We'll continue along with James Mueller.
Yeah, on senior night, particularly on the defensive end, I think there's 10 guys that will be walking. Can you just talk about the group of seniors y'all had on defense and how, you've been through a lot of ups and downs and how they've really helped lead this program to get y'all to where you are at today and, a chance to possibly go into a conference championship?
Yeah, with mainly the seniors, me, G, a couple other guys, Jays, there's a lot of us on there. It's just been an honor playing with all those guys. We've been here, through some really good seasons and then, not so good seasons, what I'm saying? So we've been here while the program's been kind of shifting. So it's been different for all of us and it's made all of us closer at least. And we're just trying to end this thing on the right note for the guys next year and just, kind of establish a culture here and just, establish, our third word defense mentality back and just make it better for the future for other guys.
Trying to end things on the right note and make it better for the guys coming in the future. So, Da'Yon, just your overall thoughts hearing Belk and Bell talk there. What stood away from you from those clips?
A lot of pride, man. It's a lot of pride, not only within themselves, but to be where they are and all that they've been through, from the different coordinators to just some of the losing times, and just to kind of have pride and to leave Houston with a sense of pride of, like Elias just said, like establishing that third ward defense, like establishing a identity. That's something that they may not have had when they got here. And so, and also just some maturity from him, just kind of like he's ready for his next phase of life outside of football. Seems very content with it and enjoyed his time. And so a lot of pride in the maturity and family. Doug Beck always preaches family and being more than just a coach, being there for his players and his team. And so that was just some of my takeaways from it. And I hope they really go out on their sword and really have a good performance, just like they did last week.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on the points you just made, that maturity aspect, he absolutely seems ready to move on from football. He was asked directly if, due to the COVID years and all that stuff, if he could have an extra year of eligibility, and he straight up said, "No, this is going to be my last season. This is it. He's ready to move on." So it's always good and exciting to see when someone's like, like you said, they're ready to move on and face the next chapter in their life. Now, focusing specifically on the defensive performance, like you alluded to, they came away with by far their best performance of the season this past Saturday against East Carolina. They held them to just 3 points. And I mean, really, they could have gone a shot. I had East Carolina tried to go for it on fourth down. It was just a complete, utter dominating performance. And Bell, he was one of the players. It was a big reason why they were able to shut down East Carolina's offense. Doug Bell talked about how Bell arguably had his best performance ever when his time in Houston, which is saying a lot. He said they put him a lot in the edge often, and he was able to get in one-on-one matchups and come out victorious. So it's going to be interesting to see because along the other name of these are just defensive players that are going to be among that 17-member group on senior night. Latrell Bankston, Elias Bell, DeAnthony Jones, JaMychal Neal, Derek Parrish. Obviously, he's not going to play, but he's been a big part of what Houston was at the beginning of the season, especially up front on that defensive line. And then when it comes to the DBs, Art Green, Dabo Waniki, Jace Rogers, Garrison Vaughn, and Gervarius Owens. All these names and faces, they've been around the Houston program for a while, and now they're really going to get their chance to in front of their home crowd, TDEC Stadium, to send it off on a right note. And like you said, the cloud of the American Athletic Conference is what it is. But for them to be able to control what they can control and go out on top, especially after what they did on the road at East Carolina, it would really be impressive for the defense overall.
It'll be very impressive and very impressive, man. And real, just listing off some of those names and the impact that they've had to kind of restore and create an identity. I mean, it really means a lot. I mean, not only to them, but to me as a Cougar alum and someone who follows this team and loves this team. And so just to have that identity, that third ward defense, Sack Avenue, just the different monikers that they have that they've created. I mean, I know Sack Alpha is a new one, but third one defense is something that they kind of recreated, but now it's part of the identity, and it will be part of the identity moving forward. So, I mean, I've liked this guy. I really wish Derek Parrish can go out there and play. I know he would just ball out. So, sure, there's going to be a ton of emotion for him. And I just look forward for the team to kind of just put it all together. And I'm sure they will. I mean, Tulsa has some good offensive players who have some seniors who are from Houston is going to really look to have a good game themselves. But Houston, I know, is going to take on a challenge. They know what this game means. They know what's riding on the line, whether how big of a chance or small of a chance they have to reach the conference championship game. I think their main focus is just going to control what they control and send the seniors out on a good note and on a high note.
Absolutely. And on that note, something that head coach Dana Holgorsen kind of touched on during his weekly press conference on Monday was just, I mean, this group of seniors, they're really, for the most part, and some of them were here before Dana Holgorsen, but for the most part, they were kind of have been through that entire transition phase. You heard Bell kind of allude to it throughout the whole process. They've been through the 2019 season, which it was a 4-8 season. It was a losing season for Houston. And they turned around, they went through COVID together. 2021 last year, the run they were able to put together, and then obviously this season it's been a bit of a roller coaster, and it's had a lot of crazy moments. Now, one of the faces from the offensive perspective that is going to be playing his last home game ever as a Houston Cougar is going to be quarterback Clayton Tune, and here's what he had to say about what he's most proud of during his time with Houston.
Man, there's so many. I can't just pinpoint one, but I think the thing I'm most proud of is just, the resiliency of this team and the resiliency I feel like I've displayed throughout the years, because it's been rocky. I mean, didn't have a lot of success in 18, 19, and 20. I didn't play all that great. And then to have a season like we did in 21, and then just, to battle through this season that we've had in 22 has been crazy. I feel like that's been almost, more impressive, just because we've been through so much more. We're this close. We still have an opportunity. There's still a slim chance that we get in that conference championship game, which would be, one step closer to our goal that we set before the season. But I think, the thing I'm most proud of is just the resiliency of my teammates and coaches and everybody around. So some I'm proud of for sure.
Once again, that was quarterback Clayton Tune talking about, again, kind of just the really jam-packed moments filled. I don't know the right word for it that have been since Houston. Obviously, exactly. Clayton Tunes is kind of he's had to take over the helm at the quarterback position for Houston since the 2019 season, when it's infamous now because the first 4 games, Derek King announced that he was going to redshirt. And that kind of forced Clayton Tune to kind of take the reins of that. And obviously we know that King never played another snap for Houston here again. And then he was kind of thrust in that position, whether he was ready or not. He was there wasn't much of a choice for him in that position. And he has grown as the years have progressed. And, he going back to the tear that the offense overall has been on in this season in particular, going back 6-7 games now, for how long the offense has been hitting on all cylinders. It's certainly going to be something that hopefully they can continue in this final regular season game and be able to send out the offense on a positive and winning note. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, the part of the seniors that are going to be honored at quarterback Clayton Tune, obviously, but also quarterback Ike Agbagu, running backs Tajon Henry and Keelan Walker, kicker Bubba Baxa, and wide receiver Keyshawn Carter. Now, one other name I didn't mention on the defensive side, and I can't believe they put him. I'm reading the list off of the seniors from the game notes. Donovan Mutin. We haven't talked about Donovan Mutin and the impact that he's done on defense, which is absurd. We haven't even touched on him, and he's really been the identity, especially this season, for that defense. He's certainly been the face of that defense.
He has. I want to talk about Clayton and his comments first, but it's funny that he uses the word resilient, because that's one of the biggest things that he really is. Like, that's one of the things he's really, really, really displayed is his resilience. Like, especially throughout last year when it was really, really bad and he played poor, like really, really, really bad. But then being able to turn it around and have the season that they had and play the way that he had really shows his resilience, the way he battles adversity. He doesn't quit fighting. And I think not only with his skill set that he has, but I think that right there is something that translates to the next level. I think scouts and offensive coordinators, quarterback coaches will really take heed to someone like that, because you just look, for example, look at Zach Wilson right now for the Jets. I mean, you look at his comments and his lack of accountability. Clayton exuded that last year when he played poorly, even this year when he played poorly, and he's bounced back after having those poor performances. And so Clayton, man, he seems like a really good leader. And also, I actually got a chance to do his first interview after D'Eriq had announced his red shirt and he was getting ready to start against UNT, the same team his brother played against. He was returning to Dallas, not far from his hometown. And Clayton really had a good game. He had a great game, and he seemed like he was just ready for his turns fully and really kind of really ready to shine in his role and kind of prove that he can be the player that he turned out to be. And so I'm really happy for Clayton to really show his leadership qualities and as well as his resilience. Man, I really, really admired his resilience, because not many people can stand tall in the midst of pressure when you play bad and really look at yourself in the mirror and own it. Look, I played bad. I need to play better. And then not only say that and really take that next step to play better. Of course, football is a game where you're going to have up and down. And so, but overall, man, Clayton's has been a really, really, really resilient player. And Donovan Mutin, man, it's crazy. And I didn't even think of that, but he's the player, not only what he does on the football field, but I think more in the locker room, he's going to be missed. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he joins the staff. If he doesn't have more opportunities to continue playing football, I wouldn't be surprised if he joins the staff as a grad assistant coach or something like that, because he's just one of those men, when you hear him talk, is just very mature and very, very headstrong and just someone that you want to be around, it seems like.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me going back to when they lost against Tulane, they were 2-3, and he spoke. I believe it was right after the loss to Tulane. It was post game, and you could tell that that loss was like I said, you could tell that it was bothering him, and rightfully so. But even then, he was able to the way he commanded that post game press conference. He touched on it. He said, "Yeah, that this locker room, it's gonna go either one of two ways, and it's their responsibility to make sure that it went in the positive direction." And I know the defense has had its ups and downs, especially with all the injuries and everything that they've been dealing with. But even from arguably for the defense, the lowest point of the season, and not even arguably the lowest point in the season was against SMU, giving up 77 to the Mustangs on the road. And then you've seen them.
You know what? I agree, but you know it could be arguably that it could be against Tulane, going against a third string quarterback at home. I agree, SMU and the points that they gave up, but just thinking about it because as you were talking and I just remember the climate of losing to Tulane and that third string quarterback. I mean, when you go against SMU, you know it's a high-powered offense. You know Tanner Mordecai and all the talent that they have, but you don't want to plan up giving up 70 points now. But, I mean, I agree with you, but I was just thinking one could debate that Tulane performance could be, arguably up there with SMU. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think the thing that differentiates between the two games is that the offense really struggled against that Tulane defense. Now the Tulane defense is really, really good. So I think that's what puts at least in my opinion, from my viewpoint, it
I
puts
agree.
SMU over it just because Houston's offense was able to put up 63, and that wasn't enough to win. I think it would have been different if Houston would
Yeah.
have
Mm-hmm.
lost by 40.
No, I
But
agree.
I think that makes it a little bit different. But no, you're right on the point. But that certainly the Tulane game was one of the lowest points of the season. I think it probably felt close to rock bottom just because of where the point real program was in the offseason with all the hype with the American Athletic Conference, the goals that they had mentioned that they wanted to get back to that championship game and win it, and then opening conference late after going 2-2 and really off the heels of they were two plays, a play or two from being 0-4 in non-conference with UTSA and Rice, which came down to the wire. So but the point still stands that Donovan Newton and I'm sure that it's among all the seniors on that defensive side, they had to have been a big part in being able to rally everyone across the team and being able to keep them together. And I know Donovan Newton specifically, he's been dealing with injuries throughout the whole season as well, so he's just continued to battle through them and be really an identity player, not only for the defense but for those younger players, which is going to leave them an impact whenever they have to be in those similar shoes a season from now, 2 seasons from now.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. I think he set the tone on what good leadership looks like and how to hold that standard, even when things are going bad, like you mentioned, how to rally the troops together. So I think that linebacker room probably just learned the most from because they probably were around him the most. And just thinking, like coaches say, player-led teams are some of the best teams.
Mm-hmm.
And from the two captains that we're talking about right now, Clayton and Donovan Newton, both of those players are very resilient and showed on the outside looking in to the media to be really quality leaders. And so, man, my hat's off to both of them. I hope both of them the best. I wish both of them the best in their future endeavors, whether they continue playing football or not. I've been very grateful to have watched them as Cougars for sure, man.
Once again, their final regular season or the regular season finale, their final home game, regardless, obviously, Houston is qualified for a bowl game, so they have at least one more game after this Saturday, but it's going to be their last home game. And then once you get into whether they decide to opt in and play one more game and all that stuff, so it gets really murky. So it'll be interesting to see how Houston comes out, and hopefully they can send the seniors out on a positive note. Once again, that'll be a 6:30 p.m. kickoff from TD Stadium. And don't go anywhere because we're switching gears over to the hardwood, and we will be talking about the Houston Cougars women's basketball team, who has gotten off to a 1-3 start. And we have clips from head coach Ron Huey, Tierra Young, and Damilah Brown. Now, it'll be interesting to hear Ron Huey because he says that the team is still adjusting, and the thing that he's not that worried about is because the team's defense has been good. It's been much more about the team's offensive woes. So don't go anywhere. We'll focus on the women's basketball team coming right up on Pawd Slama Jama. And on this note, I do want to take an opportunity for you guys. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to check us out at Let's Rage Cougs. That's the unofficial Houston postgame show covering men's basketball and football, streaming live on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel after each and every football and men's basketball game. This upcoming Saturday, we will have the first ever double header of Let's Rage Cougs, starting with the men's basketball postgame show roughly about an hour after the conclusion of the men's basketball game. And be sure to check out the postgame show just so you can hear clips from Calvin Sampson's select student athletes. We'll have breaking down all things of what happened in the men's basketball game. And the same applies for football. Like we mentioned, it's going to be senior night for the football team. Check out what Dana Holverson and selected student athletes had to say. Once again, Let's Rage Cougs, presented by the Saxenian family. For men's basketball only, Let's Rage Cougs. Also, after the football show, be sure to check that out on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. On that note, Da'Yon, coming back, I'm gonna toss it straight over to Tiara Young, and you get to hear a little bit about what she said early on adjustment periods, not only for her, but just the team overall, being able to get to adjusting on new rules early on. They're only 4 games in, 1-3. Here's what Tiara Young had to say.
I think it's very early in the season, but everybody, we stand watching film, getting up extra shots, and just doing what we can to put it all together to be able to move on and to pick it up for the rest of the season.
Things you've seen from earlier in the season that y'all are really trying to hone in on and clean up, so that you're able to, turn things around after a slow start?
Yeah. Coach Huey always preaching the things that we need to do to win the game. So with our turnovers, cleaning up our turnovers and winning the rebound battle between our opponent. So just staying on the offensive glass and on the defensive glass and limiting other team second chance points and taking care of the ball is the biggest ones that he preached every day.
That's a good question. I feel I'm still in an adjustment phase. It's just been 4 games in and, missing some time for my knee surgery. I missed some time of that adjustment too. So, just adjusting to how things go, what the speed we play at, how we like to press for the full 40 minutes. It's been a big adjustment, but I think I'm catching on pretty quickly and I expect it to be a lot better in these next coming games.
Thanks, James. Andy, you got the next question.
Good afternoon, Damana. Just kind of building on that answer you just gave. What's kind of been your mindset through these first 4 games, whenever you get into the game, just how you can impact games early on in the season?
I think my mindset has just been, how can I impact winning? How can I do what I do best, which is scoring, shooting, and defending and stuff, but how can I do that at the level that, it needs to be done at, even with me still feeling like I'm a new kid on the block, So I just feel like just kind of playing hard and bringing that defensive intensity and being a spark off the bench has just really been the role that I've been, sitting in for the first 4 games.
Once again, that was Houston Cougars guard Tiara Young. On that latter part of the clip, it was Da'Yon Brown speaking about adjustments, and for both of them, really, it still seems like it's a work in progress, which obviously that's the obvious statement of the year because they just started the season, but it's going to take some time because they're trying to adapt to new roles. In the case of Da'Yon Brown, she's adopting to a whole new system in Houston altogether.
Yep, and not only that, she missed some time, but it seems as if, like she admitted, she's settling into her role, but not only that, settling into the culture and how Houston likes to play. And they both mentioned turnovers. Well, Tiara, I think, mentioned turnovers, and for 3 of their first 4 games, they had over 20 turnovers. And so 18 in one of those games, but their last game against Florida State, they got those down to 11. So you have over 20 turnovers, then you have 18, and you have 11. And so they are getting those turnovers down. But the thing is, from what I've seen, I watched all their games, is shot making. They aren't making shots. And so that's the thing that whether you get extra shots up or whether you have different lineups and you figure out, it's still early in the season, like they both said, you kind of figure out which lineups work together and different things like that, to which you have different scoring options on the floor. But it's kind of not, I don't want to say funny, I don't really know the word to say, because watching that team and how they finished the season so strong, specifically in the American Athletic Conference, when you pretty much allow Layla and Tiara to be the catalyst of the team, because both of those players complement each other so well, and they're one of the only few players that can really break down a defense themselves and score, but not only that, they can create for others. And so it's just early in the season. They still figuring things out. But when they finish the season like that, and you see how those 2 players are pretty much your best 2 players on their team, why you don't ride that momentum that you finished the season with to start this season. And I know different injuries, different things play different factors, but that's one of the big things. But defensively, it's not the problem. I don't think they play hard. They rebound really well, man. Tatiana Hill, she's been looking like, for Houston fans who haven't watched the women's team, she's out there rebounding like J1. I mean, she's really, really attacking the glass. Like, I'm watching her, and she's really relentless on the rebound. She's just been a very, very, very aggressive and dominant player. I think she made honor roll this last week. She had a double-double and had a really strong game. So I've been very impressed with her. But for Houston, their problems is offensively, executing the half-court set and just not being able to score the basketball. I mean, their shooting percentages are horrible right now. And so defensively isn't the problem. I think it's just adjusting to new roles, a new team, new year. You still got a lot of familiar faces, but you still have a lot of faces that Coach HOU is trying to integrate into this team. And so it's still a lot of season to be played. I still believe in this team. I still believe in the coaching staff, and I think they can turn it around.
And one of the things that you touched on it, that they have excelled in early on in the season, besides the defense, has been rebounding. And this Houston team actually leads the entire country in offensive rebounds per game at 23, which has been one of the strengths. Now, we're going to hear from Ron HOU in a second. And one of the things that he said, he kind of echoed the lines you just said, Da'Yon, in terms of he's not, the concern isn't, when it comes to how the team has played overall. Like you said, the biggest issue has been they just haven't been able to make shots. Now, the reason he said it's not as big of a concern is because they've gotten so many chances in multiple games. He said they've had 75, 85, they had one game where they had over 90 shots a game. It's just about the ball not going through the basket, which has been, that, like you said, that's been the biggest issue for this team. Now, two key players that have been around the program, they're two key faces, Bria Patterson and Layla Blair, is who Ron HOU touched on in regards specifically about Bria Patterson. Ron HOU said that he feels like she's been pressing a little bit early on in the season. Now, she's had a couple of strong performances. I can't remember what game she had a double-double, but he said just overall, he feels like they still haven't been able to be aggressive. Well, sometimes they could be overly aggressive trying to create stuff when it's just not there.
Yeah, and I think I would echo that watching her. Maybe she is pressing, but really what she brings, excuse me, to the team is versatility. That's one of the things that she brings, is versatility, because she's a positionless player. Not only does she jumpstart their press, but she's one of those players at the 4 spot that can get the rebound and start the fast break. She doesn't have to make an outlet pass and get it to the guard. She has the skill set to jumpstart the offense and create in transition. And in the half court, oftentimes she can create for herself. And she's a 3-level scorer. She can make a 3, she can make mid-range, and she can score inside. And so she hasn't really been efficient, and she's getting up a good number of shots. So I like her aggression, and I like her shot selection. I just yes, I mean, I just think basketball is a make and miss league, make and miss game. And so I really don't have an issue with her aggression. Maybe she does have made some costly turnovers, especially for someone who has the experience that she has. You really don't want to see her have some of the turnovers that she has. But offensively, she brings versatility. I don't think she's one of those players that you really want to rely on offensively. I think she's a player that you can expect for her to give you. Really, she has the potential to average a double-double. She can give you 10 points, 10 rebounds a game. She has that skill set, and she can do that. I just think for some of the players who's taking a lot of shots, in which I think there are other players who are taking a lot of shots maybe that shouldn't be taking some of the shots that they're taking. I think there's some players who has a better skill set offensively, who's proven that, who should be taking more shots, who there aren't taking as many shots. And so I think shot selection from some other players, but I wouldn't say Bria is one of them. I really like the aggression, because they need her to be aggressive, because when she is aggressive, it opens up the floor for players like Tatiana, Layla, and really the entire team. And so I just think once she starts making shots, that takes them over the next level, because she's going to do all the little things. There's no question. She's going to hustle hard. She's going to give you maximum effort, dive on the floor, do everything that you want her to do. But that offense is kind of like a bonus. I mean, she's going to finish inside, get to the free throw line. And so just her turnovers for sure, and some of that decision making, especially from a senior that you don't want from someone with that experience.
Absolutely. And again, that goes back to the points about it just being a learning process for not just those players, but overall as a team. Now, here's what head coach Ron Hugh had to say about the first few games and the takeaways he's had from that 1-3 start.
I think the first and foremost thing that I learned about our team is that right now we've been putting so much of emphasis on defense, and even all summer, that when they had opportunities to go and play, they went and played, but we didn't focus on shooting and all the small things we need to do. We're always going to be a defensive-based team, just like our men and a lot of teams around the country, but you also have to get in and get that extra up with those shots. Because, again, it's the one thing that you can control. You can control how you make shots and miss shots, So, again, I think the first thing is we have to slow down a little bit and get a little bit more detail-oriented in that area with making free throws, layups, and just shots to make a miss lead, just like the NBA, just like any other league. And I think we have to have an opportunity just mentally focus and make those shots because, again, at the end of the day, it's mental. I've never had a season where we started this slow and shooting the basketball. So, again, it's mental. So, but the one thing that I love about this team is they've jumped on doing everything we need to do to get better. Again, we're getting 85, 90, 93 shots against teams and not making them, but they've asserted themselves getting into the gym before and after practice, getting up extra shots, pulling teammates in, doing all those things necessary to be successful in that area, and it's going to pay off for us. That's why I'm not worried about what's happening now. 1-3 starts doesn't define us. What we do while we're 1-3 defines us. So if we come out this next game and don't play hard and do things necessary to be successful, then I'll be worried. But when you play a Florida State team that's really, really good this year, and almost every team we've out-rebounded. We're number 5 or 6 in the country in offensive rebound. We had 25 offensive rebounds against that team. We're rebounding like crazy. We almost averaging 50 a game. We're number 4 in the country with turning people over, 25, 26 a game. Just all those categories, we're taking care of business. It's just free throws and shooting the basketball that we're in the 300s. That's what we got to improve on. The first thing we did, we started putting them in those situations every day. And it started with a minute. Now we're up to like 3 or 4 minute game scrimmages to where we're putting them in that simulation every day because it's hard to do what we do. It's hard to do what our men do, and everybody that come here first time and they struggle with that, and she's going to come around. And again, like I told her, 5 or 6 games from now, she's going to look back and was like, wow, really, I was really struggling with that because they all go back and laugh at it. I was like, yeah, but it's you have to get up and pressure. We want to run and jump everybody. We want to have opportunity to play fast. We want to be able to call stuff off the fly and be able to run offense in 14 seconds or less. And those kind of things are different if you've never done those things before. And so she and a few other ones, Taryn, our freshman, and a few other ones are AJ, are still making the adjustment to that. And so we're putting them in those simulated situations every day. We'll do it again today, and she'll get more comfortable. And I think her best days are ahead of her. And again, starting with this trip, I can see her having an opportunity to play a lot and doing some things necessary to be successful for us. Again, just because she's a worker. She's in the gym every day getting shots up. She's just trying to pick up the system and trying to just focus on her things so she can minimize some mistakes so she can be the best that she can be. But we got complete confidence in her and complete confidence that she'll come around and be able to do what everybody's doing so we'll all be on the same page. Because, you get some people out there or 3 on one page and 2 is on another one, or 4 is on one page and 1 is on another one. It's always going to be a breakdown. And so we're just trying to collectively have everybody on the same page. And Dee is getting there. She's getting there.
Getting everyone on the same page, that is a point of emphasis. Again, still early on. Now, one of the things he did mention, one of the strengths for this women's basketball team early on has been really the the defensive side of the ball, and then specifically being able to turn or force opponents to turn the ball over. I think the craziest stat when I was researching ahead for this show, they forced Texas A&M Commerce to commit 41 turnovers, which whenever I first saw it, I had to double take, and I said that can't be 41, which is absurd. But going to that Florida State game specifically, that's kind of that's been the big game early on, which I mean, it took overtime. It seemed like once they got into that overtime period, the women's basketball team, you hear this metaphor a lot, but it did kind of seem like they ran out of steam in that overtime period. But one of the things that Ron Huey said after that game is he felt that for the most part throughout the game, especially in regulation, they did a really good job. Like he alluded to in that clip, the identity of this women's basketball team, they like to press, they like to really control the tempo of the games, which has allowed them, they have been able to do that through a lot of the games in the season, which has allowed them to get, like you said, 80, or like Huey said, 80 shots, 90 shots, more than 70 shots in almost all of their games this season, which, especially in regards to that pressing thing, that's what they want from their opponents. They don't want them to get comfortable. They want them to have to catch up and play at their speed, because that's really where their advantage is. Now, like we've alluded to throughout the entire show, it's really about being able to finish. And I think I found it interesting in that clip where Huey said that's something that they weren't able to put a lot of emphasis on in preparation ahead of the season. They doubled down on defense.
Yeah, and it's funny when I was listening to that, I can't remember if he told me and Matt this two years ago or last year. He told me that Coach Sampson told him while watching practice one day that you guys work on defense so much, but the scoreboard doesn't count stops. That's what Coach Huey told me that Coach Sampson told him. I don't know if that was last year or 2 years ago, but whenever it was, he got that gem from Coach Sampson. And so it was kind of surprising for me to hear him say that, being that, I mean, you got some advice from one of the greats, a Hall of Fame coach that's right next door to you. And so, but I'm sure he has so much going on. He wants to really put some emphasis on that, and the culture is built around defense. And so I was kind of shocked that he said that, but at the same time, not really, because I know he has so much going on, like I just said. But overall, man, the team has the talent. They have defense travels, and so they're not always going to shoot under 30%, under 20% like they've been shooting. And so when their shots start to fall and they start making the free throws and it's the line, it meets the defense. This team can be where I assume they would be to start the season. And so it's still early in the year, man. No time to panic for me. Did I think they would have a better record? I will admit and say yes. And me personally, am I disappointed that their record is what it is right now? Me personally, yes, because I expected more. Is it the end of the world? Do I still think that they're not a good team, that their coaching staff isn't going to get the job done? No, I don't. I still think they have the talent, they have the right staff in place to turn it around and still reach their goals. And like Coach Sampson says, right now in November, it's about learning and getting better. That's the same thing for the women's program. They take this time. You want to take your bumps and if you take any L's, you want to take it now to correct those mistakes and be playing some of your best basketball going into February and March. And they've done that over the last couple of years. And so I still believe in the team. I still believe in Coach Huey, and I think they'll get it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the important part. Once they do start conference play, that's when this team wants to be hitting on all cylinders. Now, they're going to have a couple of two tough challenges upcoming starting tomorrow. They play on Thanksgiving in the St. Pete's Showcase. They play Portland tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. Then they also play on Saturday morning against Florida, which are going to be two tough tests and interesting tests for them. Again, it seems, I know they've had a few more home games, but this isn't necessarily the easiest schedule for them to start off the season either, would say.
Say it again.
This isn't necessarily the easiest schedule to start off for them as well. So that's also another factor.
Right. Yeah, it isn't. It isn't. And I think that's something they've had over the last couple of years. They play a top 15, top 20 schedule. And I think it's good to challenge them early on in the season. And what it does is highlights your weaknesses. That way you can focus on strengthening those weaknesses as the season goes on. But defensive, that's not their problem. They're doing what they do defensively as far as causing over 20 plus turnovers, playing at a frenetic pace. I do think at times they can play more faster and get out in transition more to create more easy opportunities, whether it be whoever gets that fast break. I think they can ignite it because they have a plethora of guards that can do so. I just think Tierra Young has to be more involved. I think she has to play more minutes. She has to take more shots because, in my opinion, she's arguably the best player on the team. I know Layla gets a lot of recognition, and rightfully so, but Tierra is just as good, in my opinion. I watched both of them play since they've been at Houston, and I just think, in my personal opinion, that she needs to be more involved, play more minutes, and she really should be 1A, 1B with Layla as far as options on the court, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, we will transition to our third of fourth segment, focusing on name, image, and likeness, specifically spotlighting HOU NIL. On this episode, we will focus on the HOU NIL's advisory board and really how that makes them unique in regards to specifically other entities, other name, image, and likeness entities across the University of Houston. I will toss it over to myself in the past real quick. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Pawd Slama Jama. Kind of transitioning on to another thing that makes you guys unique. It's the advisory board that you guys have. And before I hopped on this call for the interview, I looked at your guys' website. So it said as of September 12th, the advisory board was Galen Robinson for basketball, Zeke Reiser for football, and Brad Towns for baseball. Can you talk, before we get into anything else, just in terms of how those three came about to get involved with HOU NIL? And I'll follow up after that too.
Okay. So Brad and I have been friends for 20 years. We met on a football trip to Michigan in 2003. He got us thrown out of a bar, and I thought I hated the guy, and then we've become really close friends ever since. Zeke Reiser has written for GoCougs.com. We have numerous former players that have written for us: Zeke Reiser, Matt Hogan, Dane Roy. I really like special teams, and several others. And Zeke, we wanted a football guy, an in the trenches kind of guy to work with us. And Zeke has a great mind, and we're really looking forward to him. And then Galen is almost larger than life. What he meant to that basketball program. I mean, the players call him their mentor. They call him the godfather, the current players. And he has a legitimacy with these guys that, even though they see me every week in practice and interviews and whatever, I don't have that. And Galen brings that component to what we're doing. And he's also been fantastic interviewing people. We hopefully will be able to do some things with his apparel company down the road. But these guys are all, and it's an advisory board. They're not being paid. They're not making a ton of money off of it. They're not making any money off of it. And so it's just, we're looking to find two more. I'm looking at Akeem Olajuwon and, Case Keenum, but I don't think those two are going to happen. So we want to find two more athletes. We want to find female athletes. We want to find recent athletes. We might even go with a current athlete, just because we want to understand what it is that we need to do, what it is the needs are for the players. We've heard stories, bad stories, of athletes that their parents haven't been able to go see them in the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the Final Four. They couldn't afford it. And this NIL can be a way for those families to go see their kids play. And can you imagine missing your kid in the Final Four because you just couldn't afford a flight, a bus trip, a hotel, a whatever? And we're going to make sure in the future that if those situations arise, we're going to do content. We're going to make it work to where someone can get their families to the games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's awesome. First of all, like you said, to being able to give those families an opportunity, like I couldn't imagine being able to miss out on a family member playing on such a high caliber event for financial reasons. It's terrible. So that's awesome to hear that. But then also what you touched on when it comes to having, the people that you do have involved in the advisory board, like you mentioned, specifically with Galen Robinson, how it adds that kind of extra layer of legitimacy, which again, it's crucial, especially like you said, how often you guys are working with athletes, and it's not just a one-time one-off. You guys are working for a long period of time, so that's awesome to hear too. I'm curious, just kind of, you mentioned whenever the idea first got mentoring was on the come up, you talked about how people within the university were supportive. How big was that to be able to have that support from people within the university as well?
It's huge, and they have put us in connection with others that can help us. Obviously, NIL rules and state law prohibits anybody at the school from helping athletes in this way. They can steer them towards an opportunity, but they can't be involved. Right. And so I have made sure that we don't step over that line at any point. But everybody has been very supportive. People that I didn't know if they would be have been supportive, and obviously the athletes are all in.
Gotcha. And then just kind of transitioning over once again, and this is something you mentioned at the beginning of our interview, just in terms of, obviously you guys are HOU NIL, but there's other different forms of NIL entities out there. You mentioned Hoop and Holler, who the way they dubbed themselves as the semi-collective for Houston Cougars, and then Lincoln Cougs as well. And what I mentioned in one of our previous segments, just in terms of it seems like each one of you guys do different things. In particular, like with you guys do the content with the athletes, direct stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. The Hoop and Holler, they much more focus on, I mean, they're the entity behind the Star Pizza commercials, that especially the Sac Ave ones, they got all the traction. And then Lincoln Cougs, they're the ones that are providing the athletes with kind of those deals with companies that want to be able to work with athletes in and of itself. How, maybe big's not the right way to phrase it, but how is it to be able to have those different entities and they're all focused on different things? Because at the end of the day, you guys are all focusing on name, image, and likeness at the University of Houston, which is crucial, especially as Houston transitions over to the Big 12. Yeah.
Some people have believed or said that there's a competition between the three, Mike Pittman and Hoop and Holler and Star Pizza. Fantastic. We're definitely not in competition with them. I don't do pizza, but it's just not. And I don't know Landon or Austin from Lincoln Cougs, but from what I've been told, they're doing a great job. We're not competing with each other. It's not a competition. It's not us versus them. Everything has to work. No one is going to be able to raise enough to put us on the same level, put the University of Houston on the same level as other schools. It's just that NIL group doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And it really doesn't exist at any other school either. You're seeing athletes do events and sponsorships and things with different groups, and it just stacks upon each other. And hopefully at the end of the day, the athletes are taken care of and their needs are met. One of the weird things that I didn't know is that scholarships no longer cover parking.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, right? And so players have to take that out of their cost of attendance or just out of their own pockets. I mean, that's goofy. So we're working to try to find ways to deal with that. Landon and Austin and Lincoln Cougs, they're finding big sponsorships in sort of different ways. And I fully support that. And I hope every guy gets every sponsorship that's available. In our content, we're actually starting to ask players, what are your other deals? What are you interested in doing? Like, where could you see yourself working with? What kind of company? And hopefully that spurs somebody to get them in connection with someone that can provide them with that kind of sponsorship, that kind of offer, that kind of opportunity.
So once again, as we flash forward into the current Pawd Slama Jama, that was our third of four segment spotlighting HOU NIL. We will conclude on the next episode of Pawd Slama Jama. We will have our fourth and final segment. This one focusing across different name, image, and likeness entities across the entire country, not just the Houston Cougars, and the extended visions of HOU NIL. Once again, if you haven't checked out the first two segments, you can do so on the archives wherever you're listening, whether it's audio only on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your audio only versions of the podcast, or if you are checking us out on YouTube, be sure to go to the playlist. We have an entire name, image, and likeness playlist, so be sure to check out the first two segments on our archives wherever you may be listening and however you may be listening. On that note, I do want to set one more reminder for those of you that might just be tuning in and are new to the show or new to the Pawd Slama Jama YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to our Pawd Slama Jama YouTube channel for your one-stop shop for all things Houston Cougars. Whether it comes to football, men's basketball, and women's basketball content, you're not going to find anywhere else. And specifically in regards to Let's Rage Cougs, be sure to check out the unofficial Houston postgame show on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. It'll stream after every football and men's basketball game. Once again, we'll have a doubleheader this upcoming Saturday following the men's basketball and football games. But on that note, we will focus on the men's basketball team, which they are now the number 2 ranked team in the entire country. Only North Carolina is ahead, but don't tell Kelvin Sampson that because he couldn't care less about the rankings. But in particular, they're through 5 games in the season. They latest game came against Oregon, which, by all intents and purposes, this was clearly by far their toughest challenge of the season so far, not only because it was their true road game, but just overall, it felt like Oregon did a good job at being able to take it to Houston and match with them physically. And obviously they had the distinct height advantage. But before we kind of get into any specifics on the team overall, what were your takeaways from that game against Oregon?
First competition that had true talent similar to Houston, D1 talent. I mean, that's what the number one thing. It was like those other games were kind of like tune-up games. I hate to say it. I know Coach Sampson said each game is hard to win a game. I don't want to say blah, blah, blah. But but the competition they played up until Oregon wasn't that good. Let's just call a spade a spade. And when they went to Oregon and played that team, they actually had real talent, real length. It was a D1 team. And so, but one thing that stood out to me was that Houston, not only in that game, but in other games as well, this is one of the most athletic teams. We mentioned this in Let's Rage Cougs. But I think this team should get out and transition more. That's what I think that really kind of stood out to me. I think at times, I don't want to say they play too much in the half court, but I just think with their athleticism and with the plethora of guards that they have and the way that Jarris can even push the break and run the floor, I think their athleticism is something that I don't want to say hasn't really had in the past. Was definitely the most athletic front court that we've had. But I think they should just play more in transition. That's one thing that stood out to me because once they aren't going to grow any taller. This team isn't going to get any bigger, and they're going to play more taller teams. So I think in times they should use their athleticism to play a more up tempo, and they do a great job of turning defense into offense, getting turnovers, getting points off turnovers. They had 30 points. Almost half of their points came off of points off turnovers. So I think even in times when they don't create a turnover, they get a missed shot, they should play more in transition.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Kelvin Sampson touched on. He feels like his team, he wants them to be able to push the pace more. And specifically, like you mentioned, Houston against Oregon, they had 17 fast break points. Now, I think the interesting thing about that game against Oregon, and going back to that size thing, Oregon out rebounded Houston, which is something you don't see often against the Houston team. They out rebounded Houston 37-28, but I don't know. That game against Oregon was a bit of a weird the way things turned out because Houston, despite getting out rebounded, had more second chance points than Oregon. They beat them in that category 17-15. But a Kelvin Sampson team and one of their calling cards, really their identity over the years, has been how they pride themselves on rebounding, and that's something that in particular is going to be just in regards to the practices, it's already been a focus specifically when it comes to the front court players, something that, and especially it's something that Kelvin Sampson has mentioned in the past, but the front court players are still relatively inexperienced, especially in new roles. Now, I know Juwan Roberts has been around the program for a few years, but this is the first year where he's being asked to be a full-time starter. Jarris Walker, he's barely 5 games into his college career, and JVA Francis, even though he was with the program last year, this is the first really tough stretch for him where he's asked to have a consistent role. And then obviously we know that Reggie Chaney, he's kind of the veteran among the group to really help those guys out. But what have you seen in particular from the bigs and rebounding before we toss it over to the clip from Kelvin Sampson?
I think I've seen from them they can do a better job in rebounding, but specifically against Oregon, they were just a shorter team. I mean, a smaller team. And so I think that's going to be a trend going forward, just depending on the matchup. Not all teams have 7-footers, but Jarris and J1 are both 6'8". I think where probably we can see them is probably out-scrap teams. Be more scrappy, do more of the dirty work. I mean, you always see them falling or diving on the floor for loose balls. And so just out-scrapped and have more energy, because one thing is like that J1, his relentless energy can be a way that he go get offensive rebounds, not wait for it to come down and go get it. And so the front court, I think they played well. Although they got out rebounded against Oregon, they had more second chance points. And so that kind of still tells a lot outside of the rebounding total. I do think this is one of the most athletic front courts that we've had, and probably because you just look back at the other front courts that we had more size, but not more athleticism with Jarris and J1. Both of them are really athletic and can really, really run the floor. That's why I think, and I'm sure Coach Sampson feels the same way, that they should play in a more up-tempo pace when the opportunity presents itself.
One more point to add before we go to the Kelvin clip, like you mentioned. I think that in particular, they showed it in flashes again. They showed it in flashes against Oregon, and in particular, Jarris Walker, like you said, he could be a one man fast break in by himself, just in regards once he gets into open space, and being able to force opposing defenses to react. And I think we saw that even with Terrence Arsenault and how he came into the game, and really he was active on the passing lanes. He finished with multiple steals in that game. But here's what Kelvin Sampson had to say about rebounding and about having that up-tempo playing style that he wants to see as well.
Jamal's got to get better. Our pace has got to pick up. We're winning way too much half-court offense. But all these things happen early in the season. If you're asking me about a specific part of the game, I'll tell you we're not good at anything. So obviously you think something's wrong or you wouldn't have asked the question about rebounding. I think we're +7 on the boards right now. For some people that might be pretty good. But for us, we've got to get better. Everybody we play is going to be bigger than us, taller than us. But we played a lot of tall teams in the past. Last time I checked, I think Arizona had 3 7-footers. There's not a part of the game, and I said this the other night after the game, there's not one single part of the game we're not going to get better at. But our pace is slow right now, which means we're running too many half-court sets. If you have to run, let's say you have 65 possessions in a game, and offensively, 55 of those are against a set defense, you're not going to look good. It's going to be a grind. The other night, that game was a little bit too much of a grind. Now, we kept it moving offensively because we create a lot of offense off our defense. But we got to get back to doing a better job of getting, we scored more second chance points than they did. It's hard to believe, but we did. I think they were at 14, we were at 15. And then we had a couple of straights where we dominated the offensive boards. But we got to get more consistent in that area. JVA played 16 minutes. I don't remember. I don't know if anybody has that sheet. Whatever minutes he played, he had 0 rebounds, which means my wife Karen watched the game from home in Houston. She and JVA had the same amount of rebounds. Problem is she didn't try. He tried. That's an issue right there.
Once again, that was Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson. Right there, I think that last bit right there, I think that's where Kelvin gets into how he knows to push the right buttons to help motivate his players too. But I think he touched on it. That's an interesting point that he made in regards to that pace and really how, I mean, the point he made, if you have 65 possessions in a game and 50 of those are having to run a half court offense, it's gonna be tough on your offense, because that means that you're playing against a set defense in the opposition, which obviously that's gonna make it much tougher when opposing teams are set. They're gonna have a chance to set up their defense and really hone in on what their focuses are on.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to execute against a half-court defense routinely throughout the entire game. And you got to create easy buckets. And I don't want to say easy, but you got to create opportunities where you don't have to execute. You just playing, you just hooping, you just moving the ball and getting out and running it and beating your man and getting down the court faster. And so I agree with him wholeheartedly. I was just thinking the last couple of days, which players does Jarish remind me of in the NBA, like his skill set? And I was just thinking, man, he reminds me kind of a Bam Adebayo in Miami, 6'8", same height, same build, muscular, not tall, but can play that 5 or 4 spot, can handle the basketball, can rebound, can shoot. And also players like John Collins from Atlanta, and maybe a little bit also of Draymond Green, but he's better offensively. And so I think we will see as the season goes on, as he gains more and more confident and feels the college game out more. We'll see more of him creating fast breaks when he gets the rebound, instead of getting it and immediately looking for the outlet pass to Jamal or Marcus or whatever guard is near. And so I think the team will continue to develop. We're only a few games in. And so, like Coach Sampson said, they don't really do anything great or good right now. But that's why you got the GOAT coaching you right now. And he's going to hold their feet to the fire. He's going to make sure that they hone in and get better. That's a good thing. That's one thing good teams and good coaches do. In-game adjustments. They don't wait until after the game to make corrections. Good teams and good coaches, they do that in game, and Coach Sampson does that, and his team does that. And so on any given night, they can make in-game adjustments and adjust to however they need to adjust to win a game. And so, man, this team, I can't wait to see them continue to develop and reach their potential.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Kellen Sampson, one of the lead assistant coach at Houston, talked about, which shameless plug, if you haven't checked out that interview, be sure to do so, only on the Pawd Slama Jama YouTube channel. But one of the things he touched on, and again, since it's early, especially, there's a lot of new, not new players, but there's a lot of players learning new roles, and it's part of that adjustment period. Now, from a coaching perspective, a couple things. First, when you touch on what makes a good coaching staff, Kellen was talking about how really being able to kind of prevent or catch potential problems when you see them unfolding, and not necessarily wait, like you said, Da'Yon, for after the game to make those adjustment periods. Being able to catch them ahead of time, that's a mark of a good coaching staff, that he said. Now, in regards to specifically being able to help players, whatever emphasis could be, and in this case it could be rebounding, could be pace, but from a coaching perspective, it's being able to paint a picture for each and every player, and then set them and explain the expectations for them to be able to meet those goals, and then hold them accountable, as what Kellen said. And like you said, a mark of a good coaching staff. All these players, they definitely have that in Houston.
Yeah, they definitely do it, and they trust in the coaches to coach them hard, but knowing that it's all coming from a good place to allow them to develop. And the proof is in the pudding from their player development at every single position on the basketball court. Not only that, getting them to buy into their roles. I mean, all those things that we've talked about pretty much on every episode, every Let's Raise Cougs, and Coach Sampson continues to do that along with Kellen. And so this entire staff, really does a great job. I don't think we talk about Coach Quanis enough. It's one coach I don't think we mention enough and give him enough credit because he works specifically with the guards, and throughout all of the years, Houston has been a guard-driven team. And so, man, we definitely got to continue to give Coach Quanis, his flowers more often because his development specifically with the guards and helping them get ready. Terrence talked about him after that Oregon game, helping prepare him. So I think that's a coach we got to really talk more and big him up even more because I think he probably one of these coaches that may get a head coaching job. So I think, in my opinion, Kellen probably will stay around with Coach Sampson throughout his entire duration because he's the head coach in waiting. And I think he will wait out unless a big job just comes that he can't turn down. But I think Coach Q, he's done a great job working with these guards, man. He gets them ready year in, year out, game in, game out. Not only that, even for my interview with Cordell Jefferson, he talked about how he challenges him and shooting. And so not only that, man, he
hasn't even arrived yet.
He hasn't even arrived yet. And so, man, we got to give Coach Q his flowers and the entire coaching staff.
For sure. And like you mentioned, Da'Yon, I mean, that he was one of the first coaches that Terrence Arsenault shouted out after his performance against Oregon. I think that speaks volumes of what Terrence thinks and how crucial Q has been in his development. But one of the final things I do want to bring up, and it's just a comment that one of our viewers on the YouTube live stream version brought up. What do you think about the University of Houston being number 2 in the nation?
Well deserved. I think with the talent that we have throughout the entire roster, with the coach that we have, and the leader that we have in Marcus Sasser, I mean, you can't rank Houston anywhere below number 2. I think it could be arguably that can be number 1 right now, and so. But like Chris Gardner says, shout out to Chris Gardner who allows us to use his YouTube channel on Let's Raise Cougs, who has done an amazing job covering Houston in all sports. Rankings don't matter to me right now. I think it's great for us as fans and really for pride. I like when we're talking to other people who went to other schools, we can be like, yeah, well, we rank number 2 right now. So I think I think it's really more for us fans, but I think for the players and the staff right now, it really doesn't mean anything because what it does is puts more of a bullseye on you when you go and travel on any given game because you're going to get each team's best because they want to knock off the number 2 team in the nation.
Exactly. And I think to add on to your point in regards to Marcus Sasser and his leadership position yesterday after practice, he talked about how the team has to take ownership and responsibility in regards to the rebounding and how Oregon was able to out rebound them. And he kind of said, I know that Oregon had the size advantage, but he said that's not an excuse that Coach Sampson and that coaching staff is going to allow the players to get away with. But on that note, we're going to wrap things up here on Pawd Slama Jama. It was a jam-packed show. Talked about a lot of different things. It's kind of one of your reasons why Pawd Slama Jama is your one-stop shop. We talked football. We talked women's basketball. We had the special name, image, and likeness segment spotlighting on HOU NIL. By the way, there's Goku's the shout out. You should have more guests like this guy often. So Ryan Monceau is always welcome on the show, which I got that name right this time. I hope. I'm sure he'll let me hear it. If I butchered it again, I hope I didn't. But on that note,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but who knows? Just like in Let's Race Cougs in the past, we've had Galen Robinson hop on and give immediate feedback after a game. So make sure you tune in because you never know who's going to join us. The content that we get is exclusive only, and so you never know. Make sure you guys tune in, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow Andy because he's safe to stay like license plates, and you can't miss him. And we appreciate the support, but make sure you tune in every time.
Absolutely. Once again, as always, if you're just joining us for the first time ever, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest way to support us, and you won't miss a thing in regards to Houston Cougars football, men's basketball, and women's basketball coverage. For those of you on Instagram and TikTok, be sure to follow us at Let's Rage Cougs. That's all lowercase, no any extras, just Let's Rage Cougs on Instagram and TikTok, and on Twitter, it's Pawd Slama Jama at PAWDSLAMA Jama. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in and listening. As always, Da'Yon, you have the final word.
Hey man, like Andy just said, make sure you like and subscribe. But you can't end any episode without saying "Let's go Cougs," man. Make sure you continue to support us and the Cougars, all sports. Shout out to the volleyball team for clinching their conference title. Yep, share of the conference title, first time in a long time. And I remember that program was just really, really, really struggling. So shout out to them for clinching their share of the conference title.
Yeah, shout out to their head coach, David Rare. I don't think I've ever told this story on Pawd Slama Jama, but he was the first coach I ever interviewed when I was at the University of Houston. He was after a post game. I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't even expect to do the post game interview, and then the situation arose, and he was super nice. He was super I couldn't have asked for a better first interview after a post game. So big shout out to David Rare and that volleyball program. They're going to get a chance to go undefeated in conference this upcoming, I believe it's Friday when they play Central Florida in their last game of the regular season. Let me make sure I have that correct. Yes, sir. Friday at 4 p.m. against Central Florida. So be sure to check that out. And as always, thank you guys for supporting us.